All right, sorry about that, everybody. We are back now here live. I think we fixed our connectivity issues. We're going to try to get Dave and Andrew back in here on the live podcast. We do appreciate your patience. And, well, maybe our internet will be released here in just a minute and we can actually do this. But good discussion so far on the WWE releases today. As we talked about WWE releasing several talents, they came to terms on the release of several people. This is the Pro Wrestling Report. We are live here on Podbean on our podcast channel. We are waiting for our guests to join us back live again, and we do appreciate your patience for those of you that were listening to us on the stream that got prematurely stopped just a moment ago. So the talents, the people who were released from WWE earlier today, across the day today: Kurt Angle, Rusev, Drake Maverick, Zack Ryder, Matthew Cardona, Kurt Hawkins, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, Heath Slater, Eric Young, Rowan, Sarah Logan, No Way Jose, Mike Chioda, referee, Mike and Maria Kanellis, EC3, Aiden English, Leo Rush, Primo, and Epico, all released from WWE today. We're back. David Hero has joined us back as well. David, welcome back. Sorry for the connectivity issue there. I can hear you great now.
Fantastic. Thank God.
Let's try to get Andrew back online. You know, you were making a great point about the impact on independent wrestling. And I think we might have missed a part of that. Why don't you give that point again about what these releases today actually do to independent wrestling, not necessarily the automatic assumption of AEW?
Well, like for me with independent wrestling, when I run my Great Lakes Championship Wrestling shows up here, there aren't a lot of guys that are available to come and do independence anymore because so many of the younger, I don't want to call them darling, but they're darling talents have all been signed by WWE or AEW, and even some of the legends were signed, to deals as producers and agents. I mean, for me, a lot of the guys I used to use were Matt Hardy, Ken Anderson, Shane Helms, Abyss, guys like that, and when three of those four guys got re-signed, well, it just lessened the opportunity I had to get other names. The last few shows I've done, it's mostly been with meet and greet guests where I've brought in guys like Billy Gunn, Rikishi, Road Warrior Animal, Road Dogg, Jesse James, and so on and so forth, Kevin Nash and Goldust, guys that really can't get in the ring because of what their contracts are or whatever else. So with all of these new faces, younger guys that can still go and that can still perform, it gives the independent wrestling shows an opportunity to now draw even better. Because everyone says, oh, the indies are great right now. Yeah, because wrestling is popular, but we weren't always drawing great. But now when you can put a guy like a Zack Ryder or a Rusev or a Drake Maverick, on your poster, it's going to help sell more tickets. So
yeah, but Dave, do they even get to the indie scene, or are they going to get scooped up?
Oh, they'll absolutely make it on the indie scene. Because here's the thing, 80% of the guys that sign with AEW can still take outside bookings.
Very true.
So
very true.
They're going to be there, and not everyone can go to New Japan. New Japan only signs so many American wrestlers. And same thing with TNA Impact Wrestling. Those guys can still take third-party appearances. The only people that couldn't do third-party appearances were guys that were under wrestling performer contracts to WWE.
Yeah, I think the news has died for today. The releases, I think that it has died down. I think we're not going to see any more names. But tomorrow.
Well, we've only seen two from NXT so far, and it's expected there'll be more. And these things actually usually do come in waves, Andrew. I think they're looking to save $4 million a month. Maybe they do have a few more that they're going to whip out tomorrow. From what I understand, too, they were calling everyone personally as opposed to FedExes or emails or anything of that nature. So I'm not sure we're done.
And keep in mind, NXT has over 100 talents under contract right now.
And here's my question, Dave and Andrew. You guys may know the answer to this. It was stated, and you actually sent it to me, Dave, and this was mentioned by Sean Rossap of Fightful.com, that the NXT talents have a bit of a different release deal. They're getting 30 days of pay, and then they're free to do whatever they want. Are their contracts different as far as they're receiving more of a weekly pay rate or a regular interval pay rate versus the contracted rate that the main roster talents get?
Yeah, their contracts are completely different. The way it works is that they are considered an employee of the WWE. So WWE pays for all their travel. So, like an example, if you're in NXT and you're on an NXT contract and you go on the road, they cover your airfare. Then you get to the airport, you hop on a bus. The bus goes to the hotel, which is covered. All their meals, all their catering, everything is covered. So it's a completely different contract than when you go to the main roster, because they're treated more as an employee and not truly an independent contractor. So I think that's why. And to be fair, if they're releasing anybody from NXT, you have to believe there isn't a whole lot of value in them right now, because they're basically, they're not like the main NXT stars that are going to get released.
It's interesting the point. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
No, I just don't think anybody of significance that's going to save them money, because that's what this seems like this is, about people who are not really being utilized on television and a way for WWE to save money. I don't think anybody on NXT, that's going to cost them a lot of money is going to be, released in the next couple of days. I just can't see it because they're obviously used prominently on television.
The difference is interesting, though, between the contracts, as you mentioned, David, here, and I think some talents have even indicated in conversations that some prefer to be under that NXT contract deal versus the main roster deal due to those things that are covered additionally.
Absolutely, because you figure if they're covering your rental car, if they're covering your hotel, okay, that all adds up. You could be looking at possibly, $200 or $300 a week on the road. So it's absolutely the right thing for them to do.
So WWE made big changes today. They're reacting to the COVID-19 pandemic. They had a very heavy roster, a very, very heavy roster, but they're also doing a lot of content on a weekly basis. Do these releases, or the sheer volume of the releases, whether done or not, does that say anything about what they expect their programming to be going forward? Because it's not just Raw, it's not just SmackDown, it's not just NXT. It's also the main events of the world, the international shows that they do. Do you think that they're anticipating a short-term change, perhaps, in whether they're going to do 3 hours of Raw or 2 hours of NXT every week, Andrew?
I think the whole landscape has to change. I think the variables are completely unknown. They don't know when their next live gate's going to be. They have no idea when they're going to get out of their performance center. They have no idea when their next international show is. Everyone needs to remember as well, right after WrestleMania, from what I remember, don't they go on an international tour? That generates a lot of money. So, they lost out on that. They're losing out on the WrestleMania live gate. I think a lot of things are going to change. I think the whole landscape has changed, and I think this is just a sign of it. They don't need all these talents, and it's blatantly obvious. So,
are you guys dropping something or fighting with a dog over there? What is all that?
I'm at my desk.
It's Linda.
Oh,
hey,
who knew?
So, Dave, that's a great point, great question. So, you talked about the house shows, you talked about all the business needs that they need to meet. These talents that were released today, for the most part, we hadn't been seeing much of them on television, let's be honest, on any of the shows. But what might be more important is the either release or furlough of a lot of the backstage talent, some of those producers, those segment producers, the people. We had Shane Helms on our reaction show just last week, where we asked him the question of what is it that you do there? And he gave us an explanation of they keep everything in line, basically. So minus 20 talents, minus several producers, this seems like a longer-term plan than just a short-term reaction. What do you think, Dave?
Absolutely. Let's be honest. I don't want to say that COVID-19 is convenient, but it's a good reason for them to trim some payroll, because look at the ratings, lowest they've ever been. and they're only going to dip until we get fans back in there where people want to tune in to watch. I mean, they're hemorrhaging money every way possible. And you know that's true when they go and they start selling the WrestleMania event chairs. It's like that they're trying to recoup as much of those expenses as they possibly can.
I think everyone needs to read between the lines as well here. Don't forget when our president came on the air, which he's done every day, and talked about who he deems essential and then who he is going to take phone calls from on how to restart the economy. Maybe Vince McMahon and the WWE knows or has inside information that there won't be any live events for the next 3 to 4 to 5 months. So what does he need to keep people who are only working on house shows for?
Yeah, and I don't know what you guys heard and didn't hear with our bad connection earlier, but the mayor of Los Angeles came out just a few minutes ago and said he doesn't see any concerts or live sporting events occurring until 2021. And, these conversations are happening. They're happening with business leaders. They're happening on the national level. They're happening on the state and local level. Things may be able to open back up. And it's not just about empty arena shows. It's not just about whether NCAA, NFL, NBA, whatever it may be, is going to come back with or without fans. It is the comfort level of the consumer as well. So if you open up even public assembly facilities, people may not want to go. And if you do want to go, look at the different screening and the different hassles you're going to need to go through to get into some of these facilities going forward. There's a lot of unknown right now. And I quite frankly, everything WWE did today, I view as responsible. Because their responsibility, as much as we want to think, is not to us as fans. It's to the shareholders. That is their primary responsibility, and that's what they have to make decisions based off of. And there's no doubt they have more information than we have. But today, like it or not, and I absolutely hate it for the people who lost their jobs, they probably made the right decision with the information they had right now. And I don't doubt that one WWE Hall of Famer is talking to one WWE chairman, and they're exchanging notes, and they're not optimistic about the future.
And one of the things that's interesting is I wonder how many of these talents, how close were they to their downside guarantees as well?
Yeah. And some of those downside guarantees were pretty high, right? Some to the tune of $500,000 million.
Exactly. So you got to wonder, it's, the year has been very short as far as live events, but some of them had $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 downsides. I don't know if it's their contract year or if it's between January and December, but you got to wonder how close some of these guys were to those numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everyone needs to understand as well, too, that this company has, like we've all touched on, one of the largest roster in its history. They also have shareholders. A lot of other companies, AEW doesn't, New Japan doesn't, Ring of Honor doesn't. There's a lot that goes into these decisions. It's not just, let's just cut people we're not using. They have deadlines, guidelines. They have, things that they have to meet for shareholders to operate.
And that was the continued driver for the decisions going forward. Look, they have a real possibility. Let's not forget, the XFL went bankrupt just earlier this week, and now they're trying to sell it, and Vince McMahon is funding its continuing operations through this bankruptcy process. They have taken some very dramatic steps that Vince McMahon didn't want to do any of this, right? As a prideful owner of the company, of course he didn't want to, but he had to. And he had to do it. Otherwise, when they get on that call next Thursday with their shareholders and the investors, the people who truly drive what the company does, they would have been just decimated.
And then the stock might go from 30 to 10 a share. And then Vince is in complete panic mode.
And you know what it is? It's a lot of people from the reports I've been seeing is that people are losing confidence in Vince McMahon, that he's no longer the guy that everything he touches turns to gold, because he's gotten his ass handed to him in the last 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, but is it his fault?
No, I'm sure that, yes, some aspects, when you have over 200 some people on your, talent, absolutely, that's just obsessive. But
But
they were
he could
doing
afford it, Dave. He could afford it
back then.
at the time.
But back then he could. Yeah, absolutely. So and no one saw this coming whatsoever. But it's just like, sometimes greed always gets the best of us. And I think that may have been what happened with WWE. They had all these coffers full of cash. And they had WrestleMania money. They had Saudi Arabia money. They had $1 billion from Fox. They had a brand new deal with USA. So they were flush with cash. And that all changed very quickly.
And at no point should they have ever thought that cash would no longer be coming in. There may have been a slight dip, slight increase. It could have ebbed and flowed over the course of a year, but there's no way any company could have predicted the catastrophic nature that the impact of this COVID-19 situation has had on their businesses. So, they're planning for the future. They were, some speculate they were, quote unquote, hoarding talent because they don't want people to go to AEW. Whether you subscribe to that or not, you look at this now. We talked on Monday on PrimeTime about the foregone conclusion that a lot of fans have and a lot of people have that these people who were released are going to show up on AEW as soon as they can. I'm not sure that's going to be the case at all because AEW may be having some similar issues. They're just not a publicly traded company that they need to explain it outright like WWE does.
Bingo. And, if I was WWE, I would be hoarding talent as well. I mean, if I had the cash flow 6-7 months ago and I didn't want my competition to gain any traction, I would do it. I mean, WWE didn't force any of these, signed contracts for the talent to sign it. They didn't force any of that. I mean, they probably just gave them more money and it was something they couldn't turn down. So, I mean, I feel terrible for everyone released, but I mean, don't look at WWE as some evil, empire making people sign contracts. Nobody forces anybody to sign anything.
No. And again, if you look at the big picture, we're at about 20% unemployment. Okay?
Yep.
We are. As
growing.
Nation, we're at 20%. Yes, and growing. And it happens. I mean, and I feel terrible for a lot of those guys. A lot of those guys are my buddies and my friends. And Drake Maverick's tweet today was heartbreaking because he's one of the most genuine souls you will ever meet in your life. And to watch a man like that just be crushed, man, you felt it. And that is the realest thing you're ever going to see today.
Yeah. A difficult day for everybody, a difficult day for the WWE talents, a difficult day for the people who had to make these decisions. Look, I unfortunately have been in the situation where I've had to make those phone calls of telling people they don't have a job anymore. And it is the worst thing you can do because they didn't do anything wrong. It's a company decision. It's a business decision. And it's just tough. It is what it is. But if you look at where we are in this world and think of those talents today, all day today, every WWE employee was waiting for the phone call or not getting a phone call. That's tough. And everybody's on Twitter. This person's released. More are coming. I get it. People want to break hot news. But that had to be just horrible for any WWE employee or even wrestler or talent to sit home all day today and say, oh, well, here we go. I'm waiting for my phone call. And then that call comes.
I could speak on behalf of this, not with WWE, but the business that I'm in is live entertainment, sports entertainment, and we sell tickets and we promote and market live events. And I had to have 3 meetings with my employees and explain that everything's going to be okay, et cetera, et cetera. And then I got the word from the 2 head honchos and said, we need to lay off 70% of our staff. A couple of those people are my very close friends. So these conversations are never easy. And I'm sure people are, up in arms about this, but you got to remember, this is just the climate that we're dealing with right now. It's totally unfortunate. And hopefully when all this dust settles, maybe half these talents come back and I hope that the agents come back.
And the interesting thing is the last time WWE had this many layoffs / releases was the last time the XFL had folded.
Oh, really?
So they're almost going hand in hand, yes.
They do WrestleMania releases, though, from what I remember, correct? After Mania, they do a couple of releases here and there.
Right. But what I'm saying is the last time they had an excessive amount was the last time the XFL closed up shop.
Well, maybe Vince McMahon should stop trying to take on the NFL.
Well, but I don't think it's fair to say the XFL failed because of that. The XFL failed because of a lot of business. The reason a lot of businesses are failing. If you're a startup and you started right before this whole thing hit, which was the case with the XFL, you don't have reserves. You don't have cash. You don't have money to get you through this. Remember we talked about McMahon taking that money out a couple of weeks ago? He had to do that to keep the company afloat because they didn't have those TV contracts yet that were lucrative. They didn't have the ability to lean back on anything else. And the anything else they had the ability to lean back on was WWE, which they're now doing. And WWE itself is in a bit of risk, too. So with that being said, we've got just a few minutes before PWR Reaction, which we did actually tape earlier in the day before all this news started breaking. That's going to be shooting out on Fight TV tonight in just a few minutes, and our great partner, Fight TV. But I want to get your final thoughts, first you, then you, David, on today's situation with WWE and what tomorrow and the immediate future holds for the programs.
You know what? I'm not too sure what it is because the WWE, the talent, is one big family, and it's not just the ones that were released that are affected. It's everyone that's still there. I mean, Braun Strowman's two best friends got released. He's their current champion. A lot of the girls are heartbroken. I mean, Lana's husband is now released. So there's going to be so much unrest. There's going to be so much emotion, and they're going to be doing NXT live tonight and then live SmackDown Friday. And it's going to be a very eerie feeling. Not only is the building empty to begin with, but now it's almost going to be soulless with people just in shock how they're going to react going forward.
Yeah. Andrew Baydala, your final thoughts on today's big news from WWE.
I wish the WWE would just get this done in 24 hours so that they can move on and reassure the talent that they haven't called or the agents that they haven't called or personnel that they haven't called that, hey, you're okay for the next X amount of weeks or months until, the situation, if we have another situation that occurs or we have to reevaluate things, because these are human lives. This is totally unfortunate. And this is how they make their living. So I feel for the talent involved. I feel, who I really feel for is the people involved in corporate right now who are nameless, that you won't hear, that will get released. The men and women who are behind the scenes making graphics, making sure that the talent is booked at the right hotels and all this other stuff, who might have to take a pay cut or might have been released that you won't hear about. Those are the people that I feel for, just because, again, they don't know where their next meal is coming from.
Well, a big day in professional wrestling, a sad day in professional wrestling. Unfortunately, well over 20 people, if not more, released from either their contracts or laid off from their jobs or terminated from their jobs within the organization today. I don't think it stops here. We do have two big shows on tonight. It is NXT and it is AEW Dynamite. Hey, you got to wonder what's next, and you got to wonder how many companies are going to be able to weather this storm and whether WWE will be able to weather this storm in the long term. Only time will tell. And gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on this special live podcast. Folks, whoever's out there listening, we want to apologize for the issues to start. Did get them resolved, and we do appreciate you tuning in. And Andrew, tomorrow morning, I understand you'll have more, along with the man they call Meathead, on PWR Today, right here on the same podcast channel.
Yes, tomorrow morning we'll have PWR Today. We will discuss the fallout from a emotionally driven WWE NXT and another emotionally driven AEW Dynamite with that big title match tonight with Jim Ross on the call, and I'm looking forward to it.
For Andrew Baydala and David Hero, this is Damian Nelson saying thank you for joining us, and join us live on Fight TV in just a few minutes at 3 minutes time for tonight's edition of Reaction, where we're going to talk about Ronda Rousey's comments about wrestling being quote-unquote fake, and we'll also talk about the XFL situation and how that fits into this whole equation with WWE's bold financial moves today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you again tomorrow morning for another edition of PWR Today right here on Podbean.